Okay, so you're live on YouTube whenever you're ready.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Janet Thompson, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Board. I would like to welcome you to this virtual meeting call-in. Can I remind all participants that any rules and procedures apply? For example, comments and questions need to be directed through the Chair. While members of the public can view this meeting by YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on any proceedings. This meeting is being live streamed. Can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? And I welcome the Mayor, Andy Preston, Richard Horniman, Director of Regeneration and Culture, Charlotte Benjamin, Director of Legal and Governance, members of the Democratic Services, and Councillor Bell, the proposer of the call-in, and the other 4 people who also requested the call-in. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Saunders and Councillor Hills. Also, Councillor Coop will be asked in as a substitute for Councillor Saunders, and Councillor Polano will be substitute for Councillor Hill. I've also just received apologies from Councillor Cook, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest? Take that as a no. Right, we go to agenda item 3. So at today's meeting, the board will consider the call-in request that was received by the Council's monitoring officer on the 4th of November in respect of the future accommodation update report that was approved by Executive on the 27th of October. The Mayor, Andy Preston, Richard Horniman, Director of Regeneration and Cultures, are in attendance to explain the reasons and rationale behind the report and the decision that was made. Councillor Alan Bell, the proposer of the call-in, and the supporting members, Councillors Hill, Hubbard, Platt and Wilson, are here to explain why the decision has been called in and what should be reviewed. In terms of the procedure that will be followed at today's meeting, a copy is included at Appendix 2 of your agenda packs, but I'll also briefly go through it now so that everyone's clear as how the meeting is going to be conducted today. In the first part of the meeting, I'll invite Councillor Alan Bell, the proposer, to present his case, and Councillor Bell has a total of 15 minutes allocated to him to present this case. Following that, I'll invite the Mayor and Andy Preston to ask any factual questions he may have about the information presented. The Mayor will then have 15 minutes to explain the background of the decision, and Richard Horniman, the Director, will be able to deal with any matters of detail. Councillor Alan Bell will then have 5 minutes to ask any factual questions of the Mayor. At that point, the presentation element of the meeting is complete, and we will move on to the next part of the meeting, during which OSB members will be invited to ask questions of either party. Part of the meeting during which OSB members will be invited, sorry, I've read that twice. Following those questions, each party will be given the opportunity to present a closing submission with a maximum of 5 minutes for each party. And I will point out that I will be timing. I'll then open the floor for debate, and following the debate, a vote will be held on whether OSB members feel the decision should be referred back to the Executive for reconsideration. I'll talk about those aspects in more detail when we reach that point of the meeting. So therefore now I'd like to introduce Councillor Alan Bell to invite him to present his case and explain why the decision has been called in and what should be reviewed. I also believe that you've got Councillor Hubbard, who's actually going to be sharing your 15 minutes. So thank you to Councillor Bell, and I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I've called this call in today, that the residents of the town and also visitors of Middlesbrough should be assured that the council achieves value for money and follows due process. This, again, the council value for money statement in the is unacceptable. That the council achieve value for money for the residents. The council resources are precious and should not be squandered. I believe the decision taken improperly and without sufficient information contributes to the council failure. £1,000 is one such decision. I'll deal with the process first. The decision, I believe, was taken with insufficient information to provide a valid decision. The decision regards spending over 150,000 of council taxpayers' money. No information is provided on one, why the cost may be over 150,000, what is the exact cost will be, what is the money required for, and what will the money be spent on or how, and what will be achieved on the spend. Most importantly, no alternatives to spending 150,000 were provided. No options exploring other ways of achieving the aim stipulated in the report were provided. Without the basic information described above, it is impossible for members to be assured of correct decision making. An informed decision is not possible and value for money cannot be demonstrated. On the value for money issue, I would ask Councillor Hubbard if he would like to come in and give the committee some information on that. Councillor Hubbard.
Yes, thank you. And could I first thank the Chair, Councillor Thompson, for allowing me to speak at today's meeting at such short notice. It was basically, as Councillor Bell stated, it was the part regarding value for money. New councillors may not know that the term qualified in accounting terms is not a very good term. We always know that qualified is usually a positive term, such as a qualified doctor. But in auditing terms, if your accounts are qualified, then it's a black mark against the council's account, the way in which they've been handled. In previous years, Middlesbrough Council have found themselves in the poor position of having their accounts qualified due to value for money. And it's Councillor Bell's correct concerns that he has, that in first he's trying to protect the public purse and achieve value for money for the taxpayer. And secondly, he's trying to protect the council from having its accounts qualified for the year 2021-2022. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell and Councillor Hubbard, for your presentation. Can I ask the Mayor, Preston, would you like to ask any factual questions in respect of the information presented to Councillor Bell or Councillor Hubbard?
No.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Did you say no?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Right, so we'll hand up. Right, now I'll hand over to I think I'm gonna get lost.
Sorry, Chair, we just need to hand over to Councillor Mayor Preston now to present his the background of the decision.
Right, I'll hand over to the Mayor. Mayor Preston, would you like to come in?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Apologies if that seemed rude, but I've not eaten all day, so I was waiting for a chance to grab a sandwich. So apologies if that seemed rude. I think this is really important. I think that it is a good process to question, decisions. The question might be to try and emphasise and progress a point that's worth discussing, or it might be a genuine desire to stop something. Either way, it's a healthy process. So I'm definitely pleased to be here. Welcome the challenge. I only need to speak, I think, for about 3 minutes. I don't want to chip in on whether he's allowed to, Richard Horniman. But I would say that, first of all in is at least partly built on a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is that we're going to spend £150,000. What we're actually doing or seeking to do is have the right to use some money up to a maximum of £150,000. So that's the first point. The second point, I'll give you some context here. Built a brand new building. It's called in Centre Square. It's and semi-clad in bits of yellow. It's next to the existing civic centre. There was a plan to move all council staff in just after the last election. Because I wanted to see value for money for the public, because I wanted to show everyone that we'll put the public's interest and finances before anything else, I actually took a decision to halt that move, halt moving the council off into this beautiful new building, at risk of some unpopularity. But I thought it was the right thing to do, because I need to send a message to the public that we weren't going to build a beautiful business building for ourselves, not yet. We were going to work hard to make these buildings work for the town. So what we did was we waited till it was finished, and then we started marketing. And do you know what? Between myself and the CEO and staff, and I think us a lot more than any agents out there or the developer, we found tenants. We found tenants in the building. Two. One of them is First Source. They're going to move into that building and increase more staff, hire more people. And the other one is Causeway, a national technology business that's in Middlesbrough. So that's fantastic news. So we took the building that for us. It's paid off. We've cemented new jobs in the centre of Middlesbrough, and that building is now going to work and earn money for us and for all council taxpayers. But we do need to move. The civic centre is never tired. It's old. It's not working. It's a horrible place to work. What we don't know, of course, is that as we head towards vaccines, what the demands on an office are going to be. What kind of building is needed? Because the council did a big report 2 or 3 years ago. We need offices for this many people, this much space, this kind of aircon, this kind of this kind of that. That has all been blown apart. Nobody knows, literally nobody knows what office space people will need going forward, what kind of facilities they'll need, what grade of aircon. So we need to think very carefully. We do need to, but we need to plan it really carefully, be extraordinarily careful. And in some ways, the more carefully we tread, the better. When we move, I mean Middlesbrough Council, not me, but when we move, the cost of that is likely around £0 million. Now, to me, we've got to make that move right. Make sure it's money well spent. We've got to make sure that it's environmentally sensitive, and we've got to make sure that it's a great place to work that keeps people working and happy to work in Middlesbrough. So we're going to do it very carefully. We've got to choose the right location as well. It makes total sense to me that of that 40 million quid, that we spend something 100,000 quid on getting someone to relook at all of the options that we have. Which one provides the best value? What's the best location? What's the best option considering we're coming out of COVID, but we don't know how much we're going to come out? And by the way, £100,000 is a lot of money, of anyone's money. 4 million quid, it's not 10%, it's not 1%, it's not 0.5%, it's 0.25%. So what we're proposing is the idea, the concept. We're not sure we need to spend it all, but possibly spending £100,000-ish, which is 1% of the total project. To me, that's entirely sensible. And was raised earlier was what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is to do something bloody stupid, which is to commission a 40 million quid building and storm in there in our muddy boots on day one, not knowing whether it's appropriate, whether it's environmentally friendly enough, whether it's in the right location, and whether it's going to last for 100 years. So the options are this: spend circa £100,000 on the highest quality advice, making sure that we use taxpayers' money wisely. We get a building kitting out that will last 100 years and is environmentally sensitive, or doing something really stupid. They're the two options. I'm always going to go for spending a quarter of 1%. We might need to spend a bit more than that. That's why we asked for up to £150. Again, I welcome the challenge and I welcome the opportunity to share. And I do know, honestly, the quickest way to pour scorn, criticise, or get people to bully politicians is to talk about how much they may have spent on consultants. Because everyone hates that idea, these invisible people that get paid a load of money. The proof is, in this case, not spending money on this consultancy would be incredibly stupid, would possibly pour millions, and I mean millions of pounds down the drain, and might lead to a massive financial headache for the council and council taxpayers down the line. It's really important that we do the right thing.
Can I just say you've got 5 minutes left?
Thank you. That brought the report forward, and I think that's hopefully I've been clear enough. I welcome the opportunity to share this with you, and I know that on the report, all of that might not have been as obvious. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss it. That's me done.
Thank you to the Mayor Preston for your presentation. Can I ask Councillor Bell, would you like to ask any factual questions in respect of the information presented? And if you do, you've got 5 minutes. Councillor Bell.
Yeah. Could I ask the Mayor? He talks about the council moving, and in this day and age, at the present time, with COVID, nobody knows. Even the chief executive talked about on Friday about how many staff are going to be working in offices, how many are going to be working in community hubs, how many are going to be working at home. So we're spending money on something what we don't know is going to happen. We're asking people to go out and look at sites for offices when we don't know how many people are going to go into them offices. And further down the line, when this COVID hopefully is all over and we can move about freely, we'll know exactly how many staff we need, how many offices we need, and we could once again be spending another 150,000. That's the figure quoted, not 100,000, 150,000. We could spend that again, looking again at more options for offices. So my point is that we should wait until this COVID is, in a place where we can plan properly for offices. I'm not saying that we don't need offices, but the civic centre at present is dilapidated, but it can still be used for a few more years. And we talk about moving into Centre North East. That's an older builder and more dilapidated, and we're on about revisiting that. And the 150,000, you talk about consultants. Yes, you say it's going to go on consultants.
Councillor Bell, have you got a question for the Mayor?
Why aren't we using our staff to do this process, to go out evaluating new offices?
The Mayor, Mayor Preston, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I think we are going to use staff for some of this. And again, as I say, I think it was clear, but maybe the sound wasn't good, is that I think we might need to spend up to about £100,000. We might do. If that money, then we're making a bloody big stupid mistake. But we want the right to go up in case it's more expensive. I think it's really important that we all recognise the truth that the Civic Centre brings people down. There's lots of research in this now, if you want to see it, is that working in good buildings actually makes people far more productive. It reduces sickness and absence, and it people work in a more productive way. So the Civic Centre, I would suggest, has not just cost the council taxpayers of Middlesbrough millions over the last 20 years because it's environmentally inefficient and really expensive to heat and cool, but I would also say that it leads to a load of absence. If people have the idea of council staff being off, and none of us do, by the way, trust me, stay and we'll absolutely make sure that happens in spadefuls. Well, we are going to have to move, Alan. It's really clear, and anybody who wants this, we are going to have to move. And nobody knows, as I said and as you've just said, nobody knows exactly how this is going to pan out. But what would be stupid would be to wait 2 or 3 years and then say, oh, we need to move. Because once you decide that, it's still a 3-year process. And we're going to have to spend the money anyway. So spending the money now makes absolutely complete sense to me. And I definitely agree. I think we can get some of the work done in-house. And I would hope lots of it, but I don't, as you can imagine, it's a very, very important field where people need precise expert knowledge. And it isn't 100% clear to me, Richard might know more, that we have the precise expertise in-house. I'll finish there. Thank you.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Bell?
Yeah, yeah. Can I just say that I totally understand that the staff are going to be moving into new offices. I totally understand that. All I'm saying is that this present time to spend that amount of money, 150,000, on getting people to go out and evaluate, consultants, I think, and the other people who signed the call in also think that it's not money well spent. It's not value for money.
Right. Well, I think we've
Chair, you're on mute a second.
Yeah.
sorry about that. Now we've heard from both parties, I'll invite questions from members of the board. So I'll take some questions. Has any of the OSB board got any questions? I'll take Councillor Adair and then Councillor Marston and then Councillor Story. Councillor Adair?
Excuse me.
Yeah, is that okay? Thank you, Chair.
Take Councillor Adair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, can I just sincerely request, through Chair, Honourable Mayor, and request him not to use some of this word he used when he talks, such as, well, I don't want to mention it anyway, that he used a couple of words, you know, which I hate, and I don't think we should be using less in a professional manner, and this is streamlined as well. So that's a B word and S word he used a couple of times.
I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Adair. Do you want to respond to that, Councillor?
Well, can I finish my question as well? You know, obviously, yeah, if it's okay, yeah. The question is, Mayor explained, obviously, he's going to spend 100,000, probably up to 150. What Councillor Bell says it's going to be 150 or further 150 later on. So can Mr. Mayor explain this £100,000 or £150,000 be spending on just a consultation or is anything else? Or what is it exactly going to be spent on? That's my question. Thank you very much.
I'll bring the Mayor, Andy in. Andy.
Oh, thank you. Zaffa, I apologise to you, anybody else. Really, that my goal is not to you and else, so I apologise for that.
Thank you.
I do occasionally use words that I'll probably tell my sons not to use in certain circumstances, and I apologise for that. I tend to do it for two reasons. It might be that I actually get agitated or excited and do it without thinking. Sometimes I do it deliberately because I want to make a really important point, and it really does make people listen. And that's what, if people are offended, I'm genuinely sorry.
Don't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Question. Sorry, could someone turn the mic off? Someone's speaking. Could I care to ask Councillor Udin for the question again? I'm sorry.
Councillor Adair, can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, what I said, as Mr. Councillor Bell explained earlier on, so it's going to be obviously £150,000, yeah? But Mr. Mayor said, no, it's going to be 100,000, maybe a bit more. So what I want to know exactly how much you're going to spend and what is it going to be spent on? I heard the word, you said consultation, you know, what else? Is it just a consultation? And that, again, that's £100,000. Is it from the 40 million pound? Does it make sense?
Mayor Preston, do you want to answer that?
Thank you, that's not clear. I have to explain to you, Zaffa, and to everyone that when you build a building, like this, wherever it is in the world, if it's 40 million, between 4 and 6 million of that is in what you could describe loosely as consulting, and that will be things like cost consultants, architects, planners, all kinds of designers and specialists. All of that could in various ways be described as consulting. And what I would say to you that broadly in this conceptual 40, because there's no building in mind, in this conceptual 40 million quid, yes, 150, 100, or 70, whatever the number is, would be part of that overall total. I probably answers your question. So basically, this money has to be spent. When you're working out, if you're doing a bit properly and you want advice and you really want to make sure you don't mess up with the public's money, and you do build a building that's value for money, but make staff productive and not off sick all the time, you need to get the best advice. And it might be that we need to pay for that. I need to make it clear to people that I haven't appointed any consultants. I haven't negotiated a contract with any consultants. I haven't even priced any consultants. This is actually the officers, and I'll happily take all the responsibility for any decision they make, but it was legally my report, and I am totally happy to sit here and answer questions. But I just want to make it clear that I don't have a particular consultant in mind and a particular piece of work in mind and a particular bill in mind. And that's why we asked for the right to go up to 150,000 with this work. I hope that makes sense.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Councillor Mawson. Councillor Mawson, do you want to come in? If anyone else was wanting to speak in the USB board, would they raise their hands? I've got you down, Councillor Higgins. So I'll bring Councillor Mawson in.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a quick question for Councillor Bell and the Mayor. I'll ask Councillor Bell first. Are you prepared for 100,000 or up to 150,000 to be spent in future when there's more certainty about the need for office space? And the question for the Mayor is, it's reference to the civic sector. I've spoken to lots of officers working in there, and lots of comments have been made about the condition of the centre and other things about it. Has there been a survey done about the condition of the centre and its lifespan as it stands? Thanks, Chair.
Can I just remind people if can they make sure they're muted? Some people are not muted and we get background information. So I'll take Councillor Mawson's question to Councillor Bell first. Councillor Bell, would you like to respond to Councillor Mawson's question?
When he talks about the 150,000 being spent in the future, I've asked the question about in-house staff, why they can't be used, even in the future. We must have started, there was Centre North East, there was people looking at that, and I believe it was in-house staff that looked at that building and said it wasn't fit for purpose. So hopefully, going forward, we will use in-house staff to look at these options, what we've got, and not consultants. I don't know how much consultants cost, but you know, for 150,000 to be spent on just looking at the options is a lot of money.
Has that answered your question, Councillor Marston? Or do you want to come back on to Councillor? Councillor?
Yes, sorry. When Councillor Bell was talking earlier, it gave the impression, I could have been wrong, but it gave the impression that he'd rather the money wasn't spent now, but in future when there's more certainty about the need for office space, that he would be okay with the money being spent then. I might have misunderstood him, but he certainly had given me a different answer. Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to clarify that, Councillor Bell?
Yeah, going forward, like I say, I said to the Mayor, we don't know how many staff we're going to need, how many buildings, how many offices we're going to need. And I would rather prefer to wait. It might be 6 months down the line, it might be 12 months down the line, but at least we wouldn't be going back and saying, well, we thought we needed this office space, but we only need this, so we'll have to have another look. I mean, and like I say, I think in-house staff should be used where possible to save on costs. If you have to spend some money on consultants, that would be fine, but £150,000 is a very, very lot of money. I don't think it's value for money.
All right then. Councillor Mawson, do you want to repeat your question to Mayor Preston?
Yes, and thanks for that answer, Councillor Bell. Having spoken to staff over the years about the work in the civic centre, there's been a dissatisfaction with the condition of the place for quite a long time. The question is, has there been a survey done on the condition of the civic centre and any indication on its future life or lifespan? Thanks, Chair.
Bring the Mayor Preston. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you. I'll talk very briefly, and then I think Richard Horniman will come in because he's got some very good working knowledge of all this. But what I would say to Alan, I think Alan's misunderstanding the point. I think that this isn't about us guessing now how many staff we might have years or 8 months or 8 decades. It's actually about working like, what's the best design for a building? What kind of shape should it be? What location should it be? What facilities does it need to work properly? And then we can scale it up from there as we get nearer the point. This would be the beginning of a 3-year process. And it would be, okay, later on in a year, we might know we want it for 600 people or 700 or 500. And we would adjust the plans as we go along. This money will have to be spent. We are not saving any money by delaying this.
Can I ask the Mayor Preston, can you respond to the question that was asked to you?
Do you know what? Apologies. Sorry, apologies. It was a very simple question. I should have got onto it. I'll answer very, very, very briefly. Do you know what? I will guarantee you, without knowing this and having seen it in writing, I will guarantee you, Tom, that there will and consultants will have looked at the building and new buildings in the past. And I know what they would have said. Richard will confirm this. Whenever a council or a big organisation like this, and I'm not going to use the B word that I used earlier because Zafra will tell me off, it would be really stupid. It would be not just stupid, but really, really stupid to move without getting expert advice on how to do it. So I can guarantee you, without seeing the facts, that absolutely were consultants used in the past looking at the civic centre. Absolutely. I think we'll confirm that now.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I thought it was useful just to explain a little bit of the process that we've gone through so far and then what the next steps might be, which I think gives enough context to answer that question. We've done quite a lot of examination of different options in the past, and obviously we've had the relevant surveys done of the civic centre and particularly the future maintenance liability of it. So what its lifespan is, how much it's going to need to be repaired, and that's been compared against various new build options and other things, which is why we ended up with the decision that we did. Now that we're not going into that building, we need to go through that exercise again, and all of this, the first stage of this is all done internally. It's internal staff, and it's looking at what the different options might be for numbers of staff, what the different requirements might be in terms of desks versus collaboration space. And that will ultimately identify a specification which is flexible, as the Mayor's just said. But that needs to be tested against our existing accommodation, which we will do again. But it also has to be tested against other potential options in the town, some of which are refurbishment, some of them are about new build. And the staff capacity and capability that we have can take us so far. But when it gets to testing things like, will a particular building that currently exists be able to be refurbished? Will it offer us a better deal than the civic centre? That's when you need to start engaging with experts, and that's where the additional external cost comes in. So there is still that bulk of internal work. And again, the issue about the civic centre, we'll be revisiting that work again, because obviously we're a few years on and things will have changed slightly, but probably for the worse, not the better. But that will be a key factor in any options appraisal that we do.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mawson, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, Chair. The question was, and I appreciate the information given, but my question was really, is there any information that will indicate the lifespan the future lifespan of the civic centre without a massive overhaul cost? Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to respond to that, Mayor Preston?
Yes, please. And then I'd like Richard to get the opportunity to speak as well. Is that thank you, Tom. I haven't seen a report. I'm sure there is. It's pretty much at the end of its useful life as an office. I don't think there's a lot you could do with it without pretty much rebuilding it. I think for alternative uses, we've been advised that possibly for actually residential, believe it or not, a conversion would be possible, but would still be very expensive. But to be an office and work for modern living and be fuel efficient is pretty much possible unless you spend as much on it as it would cost to build a new building of the same size. But Richard, I think, can confirm that.
Yes, Councillor Mawson, we'll be able to provide you with that report, but essentially it'll give a range of outcomes of, it depends how much you spend on it, how long it can limp along for. It's not a categorical, it's got X years left, but I'm quite happy to provide that report for you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Richard. If that report could go to all members of the board. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll bring in Councillor Story. Councillor Story.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, looking at the previous report that was done into the Civic Centre, the suggestion was that it would cost, it would be £1.7 million worth of immediate maintenance improvements, and that almost half of the maintenance improvements that would be required to make the Civic Centre fit for purpose would have to be spent within the first 5 years, which would be approximately £6.4 million. So it's a lot of money to turn the Civic Centre into a usable building for staff. And we're aware that there are many issues to do with that. And my question to the Mayor really is just to say the building is not fit for purpose, and this is the third iteration of moving staff that we're now moving on to. There's asbestos, there's not enough disabled toilets, there's not enough refuge space for fire escaping, and the air conditioning and heating systems don't work well. So what I'm asking about this report, and referring to Councillor Bell's criticisms of the report, is why was an assessment of how long the delay might be with this 150 grand being spent, why was that not included in the report? And why was it not included in the report a cost of how much money it will cost to keep the Civic Centre going for however long it may take for us to get to the end of this process? You say 3 or 4 years, so would it not have been beneficial to have added that information to the report to give a bit more context about where we stand with the Civic Centre, which might have allayed Councillor Bell's concerns?
For that, thank you for that, Councillor Story. Councillor Mayor Preston, would you answer that?
Yes, I guess it is possible that more info could have been on the report. Yes, I think that is possible. The first part of the question, or the earlier question, I'm really sorry about it. I've forgotten what it was. But the second bit answer is yeah. I think the report could have, all reports could have more info in. Yeah, but if you could give me again the first question, please.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, the first bit was just to say, what would it not have been good to add an assessment of the delay that might be caused by getting this viability study done? So we had a sense of the time. You mentioned 3 and 4 years when you were speaking earlier. So if the report had included a timescale for how long we expected the delay might be based on the study being taking place, that again might have provided more context for Councillor Bell to better understand exactly where the project stood.
Okay,
thank you. Does you want to come back on that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I take that point. We certainly could have done. To be honest, I think it's kind of obvious that if we are looking now, we're getting some advice on where a building should go and what it should be like. It's obvious it's at a very early stage, and I think even we're probably all laymen to some extent here when it comes to construction of buildings, but we all know that putting up an office building is going to take somewhere between 1 and 5 years, right? Any of us could guess that. And then if we're not even at a stage where we're drawing buildings and planning them, it's obviously a few years away, isn't it? In my opinion, maybe it wasn't obvious. Maybe we should have said this isn't happening you know, February next year. Don't expect to move in February next year. But to me, it's obvious it is a number of years down the line before wherever we are, council staff will be able to move in.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Starry?
Yeah, just one final thing, Chair, before you move on. I think that's fine, and I accept what you've said, Mr. Mayor. I understand the point. I guess what I would suggest is that in all of these kind of reports, particularly when we're talking about significant hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of money being spent, I think we do need to make sure we've got the correct degree of clarity, and if we can provide as much background notes and as much background context as we can, then it helps bring elected members along with us. So talking about timings of delays and potential costs to staying in the Civic Centre and giving that background to show the historical context of where we've got to may have helped us get to a point where a calling may not have been necessary. I mean, you mentioned in your opening that it says up to a maximum of £150,000, but it doesn't say that. It says approximately £150,000, and it's important that we nail down that language so that when we're using the terms from the report, people understand what's being asked of them and what's being agreed to as well.
Mayor Preston, anything else on that?
No, say thank you. Point taken. Thank you. Yeah.
Right, I'll bring Councillor Higgins in. Councillor Higgins, and then if anyone
Thank
else
you.
ask any questions, could they raise a hand, please? Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor Preston, you said earlier on that when staff are treated properly and they've got a nice place to work, you get better results. Now, the staff in the Civic Centre at the moment were promised, and I say promised, that they would go into that building, that one of those new buildings. Tony Parkinson promised that. And it didn't happen. And now that the staff have to wait maybe 3 or 4 years. Now that's not looking after our staff. We are charged to look after the staff, and we're not. We're going to ask them to wait, and the conditions you've already agreed yourself that they're not acceptable. So I still cannot understand why we didn't look after our staff first, and then, because that building or those 2 buildings were stood empty for over a year.
Can I just ask Councillor Higgins what?
Yes, I'm going to ask the question. Thank you, Chair. What are you proposing to tell the staff to allay their fears that it could be 3 or 4 years before they get anywhere decent to work? Because during this crisis, they've worked over and above everything. What are we saying to them? You have to work in an unsatisfactory environment. So I'd just like to know what you're going to say to them, if anything.
Mayor Preston, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Listen, I am absolutely 100% convinced I made the right decision. And you know what that decision did? It was about looking after jobs. It cemented jobs in the centre of Middlesbrough. It made sure that we brought new jobs to the centre of Middlesbrough. It looked after the public's money and the council's money much better. And more importantly, it looked after Middlesbrough instead of looking after only council staff. Council staff are really important, but they definitely aren't the only important thing. I've got to look after Middlesbrough. I've got to answer all the Middlesbrough. So what I did was absolutely the right thing. It's completely paid off. It's working for everyone. And guess what? Guess what? If the council staff had moved in within a few months, they'd have moved out for a year, longer. Would the building have been way too big? None of us know. Would the building have been suitable? None of us know. The fit out would have been, I can only guess the fit out of that building for council staff would have been, I don't know, £2 to £3 million, maybe more, I don't know. A lot of that would have been down the Swanee because the world's changed. People are going to work differently. So I intellectually and morally, I did absolutely the right thing, and that decision's paid off. But actually, by luck, I probably did the right thing financially as well. Now, obviously, as you say, council staff deserve a good building to work in. Not right now, because they're all working from home. And not 6 months ago, because they're all working from home. And not in 2 months, because they'll still be working from home. But yes, they do need a good building. And my message would be, I promise you that I will find the most intelligent, welcoming, friendly, social, and affordable building with excellent green credentials that you're ever likely to work in. Whether you are 19 or 39, that you're ever likely to work in. We will create something special that's intelligent and affordable and works really well for the town, and it's going to last 100 years. And yes, it would be lovely if it was ready in the spring, but you know what? We've got huge financial pressures, so I took a brave decision. A lot of niggling and criticism going on in the background, but it's absolutely paid off. I took a brave decision. It's worked out, and we're gonna have to come up with a better plan, because that wouldn't have worked. That was designed for a different era with different needs in mind. So thank God we didn't move. It wouldn't have worked. So we're going to have a really appropriate building that will be great and people will enjoy. And I'm sorry if you come back in the summer and this building's a bit old. That is kind of normal. There are lots of people working in old and knackered buildings. You don't deserve it, nor does anyone. We'll deliver great results for the town, and we'll build a fantastic building that the whole of Middlesbrough will be really proud of.
Councillor Higgins, does that answer your question?
Can I? Well, partly. Andy, you said that you made the best decision. Well, maybe if some people think you didn't, but that's by the by. It's gone now. And please, can I just ask you, never ever say just council workers, because I used to say to my kitchen staff, never ever say I only work in the kitchen. There are people and they work for Middlesbrough Council, work very hard. So thank you for your answers, and that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. I'll bring in Councillor McTighe now. Sorry, did you want to come back on that?
Please, yes, yeah. Just wanted to reassure, but also just make sure that Teresa isn't putting words in my mouth. Well, you are putting words in my mouth. I assume it was an accident. I didn't say just council workers. What I said was the building isn't for just council workers, only council workers. I took that decision for the whole of Middlesbrough. Never in my life have I ever looked down on groups of people or individuals. I was brought up to treat everyone as an equal. And if anybody who knows me well will know that's an absolute fact. So please never, ever suggest that I look down on anybody based on where they're from, what they look like, or what job they do. We've got council staff who do a fantastic job. I'm not going to lie. Do I think every single person who works for the council works their socks off 100% committed? I'd be a liar if I said that. But do I think we've got great staff who are committed generally? Absolutely. Do they deserve a brilliant building? Of course they do. And what I have to do is decide when, where, and how we do that with the best interests of them and the whole of Middlesbrough in mind.
Right, I'll bring Councillor McTighe in. Councillor McTighe, do you have a question?
Could I make a comment and a question, Chair, please? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Can I make a comment and a question, please?
Absolutely, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Bell in that I think it would be prudent to hang fire until we're out of this dreadful situation that we're in. I don't think it's vital that we spend this money now and get the information now. But well over a week ago, I put a request in for a breakdown of the 150,000, and that figure was stated. Make no mistake about it, that figure was quoted. And the reply I got was, don't know, would you like to put that question to the Executive Councillor for Regeneration? So is there anybody in the room today that can possibly give me a breakdown of what the 150,000 would cover, please? And somebody's already said they can. Richard.
Preston, do you want to answer that, or shall we bring in Richard?
I think Richard will have more expertise here.
Right, Richard, you can answer that.
Yeah, the reason there's no breakdown is what it gets spent on will largely depend on which options we narrow it down to. So if we decide to shortlist options that are refurbishments. That will mean that we'll need to spend some of it on testing the building that exists, making sure the concrete's got a long enough life, making sure that the lifts are up to scratch, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're looking at a new build option, you're then spending the money on different things, which would be about, you know, can a design for mechanical and electrical be done that will serve the right amount of people within a certain amount of space. So there isn't a breakdown that can be given yet until we've completed the work to narrow down those options, because what we're not planning to do is spend money on consultancy looking at every single option. We're going to narrow those down first and then only use the external money when it's necessary to prod and poke particular projects.
Thank you. Can I make one more comment, Chair, please, very briefly?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. It's what Andy was saying about council staff. I agree with him. The vast majority of council staff do work very hard, but he's absolutely right. Some do not. Some, one or two I've come across, I wouldn't pay in wine gums, and you can quote me on that, Andy. Only yesterday, some volunteers and myself were renovating some land in Beechwood, and up comes a council wagon behind the hedge to take away some rubbish that I asked them to.
Councillor Mackay, is this relating to?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No.
Yes, it is. They took a fraction of it away, Andy. It took them 15 minutes to do it, and then they zoomed off and left the rest of it. Now, the volunteers that were with me saw that, and they were disgusted. We're there doing volunteer work, so you're absolutely right. Not every council worker works the butt off, but most of them do. Thank you.
Chair, I don't think that's relevant to this meeting.
No, I don't think it is.
Well, I've said it now, so it's too late.
Right, we'll move on to Councillor Coop. Councillor Coop. I know Councillor Cooper wanted to ask a question, but members of OSB have more priority. So at the end of questions of members of OSB, I will bring you in. So I do apologise. I don't mean to be.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just come in there to say Councillor Cooper is subbing today, so he is effectively a member of the board for today.
All right. I do apologise then. I'll bring in Councillor Cooper. I do apologise. I'll bring Councillor Cooper in and then Councillor Coop. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that I am going to ask a specific question, but in order to ask that question, I need to set a little bit of foundation so people know what I'm talking about. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm having a go at anybody, because I'm not. What I would like to say is that the Mayor is correct in wanting to do his homework and get proper assessments done. We all remember a certain large hotel in the town that had a business underneath it who wanted to do a little bit of cheap refurbishment. They got somebody in, got the package together. When they started it, the business at the ground floor had to move over to Teesside Retail Park because the surveyors had got it all wrong, and the hotel chain had to spend a lot of money putting it right. More up to date, we also know that a building on Russell Street was checked over and work was going ahead, and then that had to move to a different location. So getting your homework done right is absolutely essential. What I would like to know is if the money that's been spent on people checking things out for us goes to an outside source, if they get it wrong and we end up with a big bill, are we covered by insurance? Because if that was the case, and I could understand in going out of house. If it's not the case, then wouldn't that money be better spent in-house training so we could have in-house staff doing the work for us to make sure that we got a full and factual report? Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Preston, would you like to respond to that?
Very good question, that. So, yes, basically is the answer to the first bit. Anybody who provides professional services these days, legally is to have, and almost certainly will have, to save them from financial ruin, is professional indemnity insurance. So if they make a horrible mistake and it costs you 8 million quid to put right, you can sue their insurers or make a claim against their insurance. So I'm sure we would check before we appointed anyone, but I'd be absolutely certain that anyone we're dealing with will have that insurance in place to avoid the kind of things we talked about, or not avoid them, but if they happened, it wouldn't be a financial issue to us. The second point, train the staff. I mean, yeah, yes, it could happen, but I do think, Barry, that we're going into a policy which is so specialised, and their skills would be used so infrequently, and the amount of training they would need would be so big that I don't think it'd be cost effective. And I do totally understand, you know, Alan's and Brian's and Barry's and everyone else's sense. Well, this money's going to outside businesses. Why can't we do it in house? And I do understand that urge. I honestly, of course, but in a local authority of our size, it isn't feasible. It would cost us it would take us years and cost us a fortune to build up, and then their skills would be used so infrequently. I mean, if we were, say, Birmingham Council, you know, 1.1 million people or something, they may have expertise in house. I don't know. They may well do, but something of that scale, you know, 8 times our size. But for us, or even a council of 300,000-400,000 people, I don't think the skills would be in house at all. I don't think it'd be cost effective to bring them in house. So I hope that answers the question.
Councillor Cooper, does that answer your question? Councillor Cooper, your question? I take that as a yes. Right, I'll bring Councillor Coop. Councillor Coop, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do recall a few years ago when we actually talked about moving from the Civic Centre into the new building at Centre Square. There was various discussions happened and there was feedback given at the time. And the offices, for example, for councillors was changed and things. So, because at the time we were going to be mixed up with officers and councillors, which probably wasn't a good idea. You know, they deserve to get some time away from us. The whole point of that was there was consultancy done, as I believe, at the time to move into that building, which did seem a good idea. Things have changed quite dramatically, as been pointing out today. If we were to move into a completely new building, okay, what I would like to know, rather than move into Centre Square or something like that, taking the fact it would have to be fairly close to the town hall, because we still needed the town hall for things like council meetings, because there was never any plans to replace the council chamber and things like that. How long is the maximum period of time? If we can put this off for, say, 6 months, because as it's been rightly pointed out, and I do understand, there is no size how big the council requirements are going to be. Do we need 40%, 50%, 60% of it? So is it possible that we'll be doing things in-house? It'll probably be nearer the time we'll be moving into anyway, and perhaps that will be the date to decide about how much the cost would be. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Preston, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, David. I think I do understand your point. I understood it when Alan said it, or something similar. But I don't think there's any point in delaying this. It's not like we're spending money now that we might not need to spend in 6 months or 2 years. It's going to have to be spent. So if we don't spend it now, we're delaying spending it, and we're also delaying when the staff get a decent building working, and we're also delaying when we're using a building that's more efficient for the environment. So I don't see any upside in delaying this, to be honest. I hope that answers the question, and maybe we just disagree, but I don't see any benefit in delaying this.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not trying to disagree. I'm just not playing devil's advocate. I'm just trying to see at what point, if we're going to do this, we take our own in-house consultancy, take it to a point which could be, say, March, April time before you need to bring them in, or do you need to bring them in before? I'm just trying to find a balance here between where we can do it. As Richard Horniman pointed out, you can take a project to a certain point in-house and say, right, the options are narrowed down from that many to that many. And then at that point, you can take it through, which could well be into next year. I'm not disagreeing on the fact that we need consultants. I do agree. I've worked in lots of projects and things costing millions of pounds through my life, and I've seen these things and I know what's involved in things like that. All I'm trying to do is just find a compromise here where people can understand where the money is going to be spent, on when the outcome is going to be achieved, because it's quite rightly there that what we would like to achieve, we need the best possible building for our staff, the best possible thing for the council. The building that we've put up there has won awards. We want to make sure this one wins awards, and it's got to be fit for purpose. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor you want to come back on that or not?
Just very quick. Thank you for that. I think the vast majority of the consultancy work, if it's ever appointed, would be which buildings need what doing to them, how can they be adapted, and it's so specialist that I don't think much of it could be done in-house, though I'm sure patches, but we've got a tiny team in-house, typically generalists, so I just don't think much of it can be done in-house, I'm afraid.
Right, has anybody else got any more questions for the Mayor or Councillor Alan Bell? I'll take Councillor Story. Do you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. I have one for Councillor Bell and then a couple of very brief ones for the Mayor, if I may. Before I say anything else, can I just say, I think that the Mayor particularly needs to be so much more careful what he says in public about staff. This isn't the first time that he said that some staff don't do a good job in public, and the impact it has on morale will be significant, and it leaves the council potentially open to legal action by staff. If people have issues with staff, then it should be done in private, if at all. But this is not the arena to talk about staff and how you feel they work, because it will have a tremendously demoralising aspect on all of the people who work here. So please be more careful what you say about staff. It's so important. So I'll just move on to my question for Councillor Bell, if I can. Councillor Bell, could you refer to value for money in your original opening statement? Could you explain to me in detail exactly what aspect of value for money you think that this proposal would not meet, and what your understanding of the term value for money in terms of the internal audit process of the council is, please?
I just say that value for money, for me, is what it says, that the residents of Middlesbrough are getting value for the money what they pay in the taxes, the council taxes. And on this occasion, I put this call in because I don't think they are getting value for money. As I said, I believe with the COVID pandemic still going on, it should be halted. All this should be halted, so we know exactly what staff are getting moved up into offices and what staff are getting left in the house or in the community homes. Until we know that, I don't think we should be spending 150,000. I don't think it gives value for money.
Okay, just a very brief follow-up. But could you explain exactly how you feel this particular proposal does not meet value for money qualifications?
No, I couldn't.
Okay, thanks. If I could just move on to the Mayor. A couple of things, Mr. Mayor. One is, would you agree that when you engage in a major capital investment project like this, that it is essential that before you do anything else, you engage in a full and detailed viability study to ensure that you're doing the right things and that you're making sure that the project you deliver is the right project, and that viability study is essential to the delivery of that entire project?
Bring the Mayor Preston.
Yeah, I think it's critical that before you engage in any significant project of any kind, you are supremely doing the right thing, that you're aware of the risks, that you've solicited opinion, that you've consulted with people, you've sought friendly criticism, and you gauge the people around you. Absolutely. Regards to viability, so that can mean a million different things. So I won't comment on an actual commissioning a study. I don't even know if there is anybody who professionally does viability studies, but yes, absolutely. Is it important to look at a project carefully, seek advice from experts, seek challenge from other people, and work out whether it's a really, really good thing, sensible thing to do? Of course, that's really important.
Okay, that's great. And the final thing I want to ask you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, you referenced the Civic Centre, and this is all part of my point about context, really, about the detail around what's happening here. You mentioned that before that the Civic Centre had been assessed for residential, to be developed into a residential property, and I was quite interested to hear that because that's not something I've heard before. I wondered if you could give a little bit more detail about what piece of work has been commissioned into turning the Civic Centre into a residential property, or how that might work in practice and what stage that was at, and what had gone on at the council in terms of that proposal.
So basically, we have not, Middlesbrough Council have not commissioned or paid or solicited any work regarding that. However, independently, and off their own back, excited at what's happening in central Middlesbrough now, and really excited about the potential for urban living. 2 property developers came forward to council officers and suggested that they would be very interested in converting. They did their own work, their own studies, presumably they looked at the plans, they believed there was some viability there. And if we did anymore, they would be interested in paying, not very much, but paying something for the building and turning it into residential. So yeah, work has been done, not by the council. It's not work we've undertaken. It's not expenses we've incurred. It's not a political wish. But absolutely, are there 2 significant property companies out there that have independently and unsolicited approached us and suggested that? Absolutely.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Story?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Has anyone else got any more questions? Mayor Preston?
Chair, there was something I forgot to say there. Is I need to clarify something. But before I clarify, I think people are using this meeting to put words in my mouth. And before I talk about that, I'm going to make it really clear. And just as I've said, I reckon I've said in writing about 20 times since I was elected. So that's almost once a month. I reckon verbally, I've said in the council chamber, physically or online, probably 10 times, praising staff, sometimes named individuals, but generally the work ethos. Every time I meet people, and they talk about councils being bureaucratic, I say, you know what they are. But it's not because they're councils, and it's not because they're public sector. It's because of the scale. Once you go above a certain scale, you get a division of labour, and you end up with a necessary bureaucracy. I think Middlesbrough Council is relatively lean. I think people work very hard. I think it's pretty productive. I think it's come a long way in the last 10 years from what I can see, and I think it's heading the right way. I have never criticised staff, and I've certainly never actually done anything other than say very positive things. But the point I was making to Councillor Higgins was we have great staff and they deserve a great building. Are they all saints? Are they all perfect? Of course they're not. Just as they're not at Stockton Council, or at Northumbria Water, or Google, or wherever else. What we mustn't pretend is that everything is perfect. Because the public know it's not true. We can improve. Staff, we have a great ethos, we deliver for money, but can we improve all of those things? Absolutely. But do I criticise staff? Never. Do I bring them down? Never. Do I champion them? All the time. So please don't suggest to anyone on here, for any reason, that I ever do anything other than that. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll invite both parties to give their closing submissions, and we'll take Mayor Preston first. Mayor Preston, would you like to do your closing submissions? Thank you.
I would just say, I found this process quite interesting. First time for me. I think it's healthy. I think it's good. I don't think people should be bashful about challenging things. I think it's all very constructive. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope I've clarified it. I think that we need to move with some speed, but we're determined not to rush it. We need to move as little money as possible, but we have to spend it wisely and invest for sustainable viability. We have to move and make sure we're doing the right thing for the environment, and we have to move and make sure that we're offering staff the kind of workplace that want to come to work and makes them want to stay working for the council. To do that, we need to spend some money, and we need to spend that money either now or 6 months, 26 months or 6 years. It's better to spend it now. The more certainty we get now, the better. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll bring Councillor Alan Bell. Can I invite you to give your closing submissions, please? Councillor Bell, make sure everybody's got on mute, please. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Once, like Andy, thank you for this meeting. It's been very informative for me, first time for me also. Could I agree with David Cooper, what the comments he made, where he said that we should sort of like I say, hang fire for 6 months to see where we are with this COVID, and in the meantime, get the in-house staff to look at certain aspects of offices in the town or wherever they're going to move to, where they're thinking of moving to. And then in 6 months' time, when we have a better idea of how many staff we need officers for, I think, personally, the best option would be to build a new office, to pay for it ourselves, so we don't be paying rent to anybody, but to build offices for us, and if necessary, build some extra offices so that we could rent out to pay for the council officers below. That's only my thought. But I agree with David that, we should hang fire for 6 months till this COVID is under control and we know where we are in a better place. And I'm sure the in-house staff, what we've got, what Richard has under his command, can go out and do things that won't be costing us anything. And then in 6 months' time, if we've got to spend a few £1,000s on consultants, fair enough, we should do that. That's my thoughts, any road.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bell. Now heard the case from both parties, and therefore I'd like to open the floor to members of the board for a debate. Is anybody wanting to start this debate? Councillor Story, I'll bring Councillor Story in.
Hi, Chair. I have a suggestion that I hope people will take at face value for what it is. My view is that there is merit in referring this back to the executive, but perhaps not for the exact reasons that Councillor Bell has specified. I think it might be useful if the executive and officers had another crack at the report to set it in a better context. I think that's part of the problem with the report. I think if it had more detail about previous studies that have been undertaken, about the state of the Civic Centre as it currently stands, and the importance of moving staff from the Civic Centre, which is totally unfit for purpose. Everyone accepted that, which is totally unfit for purpose. That they look again at the report just to set it in its proper context and the historical background of where we've been, where we've got to, and the options that have been assessed in the past, and how we've got to where we are now with CNE Tower. I think that would provide members with a much better viewpoint to look at the options in front of them and to understand a bit better about the importance of finding a new place for staff to work, because it's absolutely critical that we get this done and that we don't continue to have iteration after iteration of different buildings and options put forward. We need to get staff somewhere that works for them, because we cannot allow them to continue working in an unfit building. So I think it should be referred back just so that the executive can have another look at a report that gives a bit more detail and background so we can understand better exactly where we stand.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor Mawson in and then Councillor McTighe. Councillor Mawson.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think that's the problem with this report. There's not enough meat on the bone. And I can agree with Councillor Story that not sending it back to reject it totally, but to send it back, have more clarity in the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor McTighe in.
Sorry.
Councillor McTighe, you need to mute.
I have done twice.
There you are now. All right.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with both Councillor Bell and Councillor Story. I think if you put both their comments stroke suggestions together, it would be a very good idea. But I think they should start from scratch with a completely new report, with, as Councillor Mawson said, more meat on the bone and a more detailed explanation of where the money is needed with regard to consultants and what we can do and what we cannot do. Thank you.
Councillor Coop, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just say can I just give an explanation? When I said what we can do, what we can't do, I meant in-house. Thank you.
Thanks for the
Yep. Thank you, Chair. I seem to recall that it was something like 20 million would cost. This is going back a few years to refurbish the current civic centre with various problems that it may or may not have. So that's really out, and that's why a decision was made to go to a new property. I think we want to have a look at where the options are and things. I have personally no problem about spending 150 up to 150,000 if that is absolutely necessary, but I would want to make sure it's gone through officers first, so that, as I say, they narrow it down. So it's difficult to say, but I just want value of money for the council, for the people of Middlesbrough, and I want to make sure the place we move is fit for purpose. And whatever we need to achieve that is what I would like to achieve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cook. I am aware that we've got members here who are not part of the OSB, and I would like to invite any of them if they've got any questions or comments. So is there anybody else who would wish to ask a question or a comment? No? Alma? Councillor Halawawi, are you wanting to ask a question? Councillor Halawawi?
Thank you. No, but
You're unmuted yet.
yes, thanks. Can you hear me now? It's just to say that I also agree that we need more detail in such a report. Any report of this nature and the request for spending of money in such sums needs to be very clear. We need a lot of background information. We need some other reports that give us detailed context. We need different options. I think part of the reason why we've got this call in right now is because we haven't had enough information. That's become apparent through the questions. So mine is really a plea to take this back, have the report expanded with a lot more detail and a lot more clarity, and a recommendation that from now on that is always the case, that any such reports are detailed and transparent with all the information that we could imagine anybody wanting to learn to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Wilson, are you wanting to ask a question?
I was, Chair, but I think Councillor Halani's...
Get rid of one of them because it's...
I think that's sort of the problem, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, I'll bring you back in. Councillor Wilson, you're not muted. Can you unmute? Councillor Wilson, you need to unmute.
Try again.
Yeah.
I want to answer the same question, or ask the same question I was going to mention myself there. But I'd just like to add to that. I think maybe if you've got all the officers involved, ask them what they think they would like in a new building. It might help saving money in that respect. At least we know what they want, what they would like. And what the other question is, how long do you think we've got, or how long is left the lifespan of the Civic at the moment? Do we have that one, Richard?
Does anyone want to respond to that, Richard or the Mayor Preston?
I can do. It's difficult to put a definitive figure on. As I said earlier, it's one of those things where with a bit of patching up, it can limp along for a bit, but it depends on the amount of patching up you're prepared to do. So I'll share the report that does have all of that detail in there, but it's a pretty unpleasant place to work now, and it's just getting worse. And it depends what degree of patching up we want to do, really.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Richard. Much appreciated. Councillor Garvey, you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Chair. No, I just wanted to make a statement on where we are. I understand the importance of making this money available so we can get on with finding staff and new premises, but I also understand the argument for making this report a little bit more beefy. And I've got to say, I understand all sides of the argument, but I think the sooner we find staff and the sooner we find new premises, the better. And this money is just money that is budgeted for doing that. It's not just going to go out and spend it. It's budgeted for doing that. And I think people need to understand that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garvey. If there's no more questions or comments, No? Right. So I think we've now covered all of the main aspects and had the opportunity to have a full discussion in respect of this matter. As a board, we now need to vote on whether this matter should be referred back to the executive for reconsideration. So can I therefore invite all members? And I think I might need some help from Caroline, who's allowed to vote and who isn't allowed to vote. So can I ask people to raise their hand if they're in favour of returning this back to the executive? All those in favour, raise their hands. Carolyn, tell me the figures.
Sorry, can I just check how many? I'll just count there. Sorry. So we've got Alma Halawi, Councillor Lee Garvey, McIntyre, Matai, Janet Thompson, Barry Cooper, Coop. I think that's everyone in favour of having it referred back, Chair.
Chair, can I just say that Councillor Bell doesn't appear to have voted. I couldn't see his hand going up.
Yeah, he's not a member of the board. Sorry, John. He's not.
Sorry. I thought he's a member. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Can I just say, Caroline, have you counted me? You haven't mentioned my name, so I don't know whether you.
Yes, sorry, Zaffa. Yes, everybody's in favour of referring it back.
So can I just say for clarification that is there anyone not in favour of sending it? No. Right. The decision therefore is to refer it back. So we need to give clear reasons as to why the decision is being referred back to the executive. I think it's being made clear during the course of the discussion. They will be outlined in writing following the meeting and circulated to all councillors. So with that in mind, now we've decided to refer it back. Is that concluded? Caroline, have we concluded that?
Yeah, that's concluded, Chair, yeah.
Chair, can I ask a question, please? Has anybody abstained at all? Because I didn't see Councillor Mawson's hand go up. I might have missed it. It did go up, thank you. Thank you, Chair, that's it.
All right, thank you for that, Councillor McTighe. Okay, right, I'd like to thank our
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in to advise that we now, given that the decision is now to refer back, we will need to hold an executive meeting within 10 working days of today in order for the report to be reconsidered. So we'll need to have that scheduled in. So that's what the next step will be. And once we've got a date agreed, we'll obviously circulate that for members' reference as well.
All right. Clarification, Caroline. Councillor McTighe, Councillor Higgins, sorry, did you want to come in?
Yes, can I just clarify, Chair? And we voted that it's going to go back, but also have we agreed that there'll be more, as somebody said, meat on the bone within the report?
Yes, absolutely. Right, is everybody clear on that? Clear on the decision that we're referring it back to the exec? And as Caroline pointed out, it has to be done within 10 working days. So I'd like to thank the Mayor and Richard Horniman and the rest of our speakers who came along and took part in this. So thank you very much. I'd like to move on now to the agenda. So the next agenda item is any other urgent items, which I don't have any other urgent items. And I don't know if anybody from OSB has any urgent items. I haven't been told of any, I'm not aware of any. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you for attending the meeting and wish you all a goodbye.
Thank you, good night.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.